All right, we're going to read The Grand Canyon by Jason Chin. And this book is going to take us on an adventure through the Grand Canyon and through the rock layers. And I want you to think about, while we're reading, I want you to think about how the Grand Canyon and those rock layers have changed over time. So what state did we say that the Grand Canyon was in? Ansley? Arizona. Rivers carve canyons. When they cut down into the earth, canyons grow deeper. As weathering and erosion break apart their walls, canyons grow wider. Over time, rivers wash all the eroded material away. These processes have been at work for lots of years, relentlessly excavating the mighty gorge known as the Grand Canyon. Harper, if you need to move over so that you can see, you can. Okay. Grand Canyon is one of the largest canyons in the world. It is 277 miles long, as much as 18 miles wide, and more than a mile deep. But it's much more than just a big hole in the ground. It's home to an astonishing variety of plants and animals. The canyon is much hotter and drier at the bottom than at the top. Because of this, different groups of plants and animals or ecological communities are found at different elevations in the canyon. The hottest part of the canyon is at the very bottom, a 1,000-foot deep chasm called the Inner Gorge. The Inner Gorge may be the hottest part of the canyon, but there are oases in this desert. Creeks bring life-giving water into the gorge as a wide variety of species along their banks, including frogs, dragonflies, mule deer, and the endangered southwestern willow flycatcher. Many of these creatures are permanent residents that rely on running water for survival, while others are visitors drawn here by their thirst. Eventually, every creek in the canyon flows into the largest stream of all. What's the largest stream that goes through the canyon?
Colorado.
Very good, the Colorado River. The Colorado runs through the entire length of the Grand Canyon, continually washing sediment away and slowly deepening the canyon channel. It's been cutting into the land for lots of years, slicing through layer after layer of rock. Today, it is cutting into the basement rocks. These rocks are part of the continental basement, the bottommost layer of the continent. So it shows you over here the rock layers that are in the canyon. Can you see the different layers?
Yes.
You remember seeing those in the photographs of the canyon?
Yes.
Seeing those different color bands? The basement rocks are the oldest in the canyon, as much as 1.84 billion years old, some scientists think. Many younger rock layers are stacked on top of them. If you hike out into the canyon, you'll pass younger and younger layers as you climb, as if walking up through time. Where are the oldest layers at, Caden? Where are the oldest layers in the Grand Canyon? The top or the bottom? The bottom. And as you go up, those become the newer layers. Above the basement layer, you'll reach the Grand Canyon supergroup. Here, you may find the ripple marks preserved in the stone. What would ripple marks be from? Water. Clues like these tell us what the place was like when the rocks formed. They are like windows. Down here at the bottom, it's showing you some of the layers. You've got the basement rocks, and then those layers of sediment are added to it They're like windows to the past. This is Grand Canyon. Remember, we've talked about how there's a lot of different speculation on how old the Earth is and how old the canyon is. But irregardless of how many years old it actually is, we still know that it's been there a very long time, right? Although they were too small to see, primitive organisms filled the oceans, and some were the earliest forms of life on the planet. The mud from this tidal flat eventually transformed into a layer of solid rock, and these ripple marks were preserved in the process. They are now part of the Grand Canyon supergroup. After climbing out of the inner gorge, you'll find yourself on a broad, sun-baked slope. The plants and animals here are well adapted for life with little water. Black-throated sparrows can go for long periods without taking a drink. Many creatures sleep during the heat of the day. Pocket mice forage at night and are preyed on by owls and rattlesnakes who are adapted for hunting in the dark. What does that mean, adapted for hunting in the dark? What would that mean? What do you think, Justice?
Like they got used to hunting?
Yes, they have some type of way that they're able to hunt at nighttime. These animals are living in the rock layer called the Bright Angel Shell, which formed more than 200 million years ago, some scientists think, after the Grand Canyon supergroup.
So what was it called again? There's like some of the seashell.
Bright Angel Shell. This layer once laid beneath the sea. This is the Grand Canyon, they think 515 million years ago. By this time in Earth's history, many multicellular plants and animals had evolved. Soft-bodied jellyfish floated above the brachiopods and hydrolites, some of the first creatures on Earth with shells. The first animals known to have eyes roamed the seafloor. Around them, worm-like creatures burrowed in the sediment, which eventually is what transformed into the Bright Angel Shell. We talked about those fossils being in the rock layers yesterday. Towering over the Bright Angel Shell is a massive cliff called the Redwall Limestone. The Redwall has many inaccessible caves that provide nesting spots for one of the rarest birds in the world. What would inaccessible mean?
Not able to go into it.
Exactly, you can't get to it or into it. With a 9-foot wingspan and weighing as much as 23 pounds, the California condor is the largest land bird in North America. They are vultures, and during the Ice Age, they fed on the carcasses of megabeasts like giant ground sloths. Since then, their population has declined due to changes in climate and human activity, and now they are close to extinction. It's a very large bird, isn't it?
Why would they be? Why would people be making them close to extinction if they're one of the rarest birds in the world?
Well, if they're one of the rarest birds, does that explain why they're coming close to extinction?
Yes.
Yeah, if they're rare, that means there's not very many of them. Above the Redwall Cliff is the slope of rust red rock. The climate here is not as hot and dry as below, and pinyon pines and Utah junipers are common. Most creatures, such as squirrels, chipmunks, and wood rats, eat their seeds. These small rodents are preyed on by gopher snakes and coyotes. At the top of the slope is the rock layer called the Hermit Formation. Fossils in the Hermit tell us that long ago, this spot was home to huge dragonflies with up to 8-inch wingspans.
Ooh, 8 inch.
Can you imagine seeing a dragonfly that's 8 inches?
I've seen many dragonflies.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a hole in the book?
Yeah, it's showing you what's behind in that other pages.
That'd be awesome.
This is Grand Canyon many, many years ago. They think about 280 million years ago. By this time, life was flourishing on land, and trees, ferns, fish, amphibians, and reptiles had evolved. The sea had retreated from the region, and rivers flowed across the landscape. Seed ferns and conifers grew along their banks, and amphibians left their tracks in the mud that eventually transformed into the Hermit Formation.
I've seen like a lot of dragonflies since my farm is called Dragonfly Free from Horn Farms because in the summer like dragonflies.
There are a lot of dragonflies there. Have you seen any with 8-inch wingspans? Honestly, that would probably be pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
Imagine a dragonfly 8 inches swooping down your face.
Yeah, that would be kind of scary. Above the red slopes of the Hermit are pale 350-foot cliffs. Bighorn sheep can easily navigate their narrow ledges with specially adapted hooves. In the fall mating season, males compete for dominance by smashing into each other with their battering ram horns. These cliffs have been carved from the Conoco sandstone. Fossil footprints in the rock tell us that on this spot 275 million years ago, an early reptile walked across it with huge wind-swept dunes. With little water, life here would have been difficult, but the desert wasn't entirely barren. Among other species that called it home were scorpions, millipedes, spiders. As the desert wind whipped across the landscape, sand piled up in thin layers. Today, those layers are preserved in the Coconut sandstone as thin, angled surfaces called crossbeds. You see the picture of the reptile they were talking about there? Yes, ma'am.
In all the desert, a long time ago, a desert could have probably been an ocean.
You're right. There's definitely evidence that shows that the ocean was there where the Grand Canyon is today. Yes, sir.
Doesn't a millipede have 1 million legs or something like that?
No,
How much does it have?
I don't know.
I don't know.
As you approach the rim of the canyon, the climate becomes cooler and more moist. Vegetation on the sloping Toroweap Formation is more dense than below. Before exiting the canyon, however, there is one more layer to scale: the Kaibab Formation. The limestone cliffs are full of marine fossils that tell us about life here about 270 million years ago. When the ocean again covered the land. Fossils in this formation tell of a complex ecosystem. The sea floor was home to sea lilies, bryoxans, sponges, coral. Trilobites and branchiopods lived alongside them. As many as 40 species of shark patrolled the water above them. Many of these creatures, such as the coral and branchiopods, have hard shells. When they died, their shells piled up on the sea floor and eventually transformed into the limestone that is now this foundation.
That boy
What
better
kind of
move.
shark is it? The one that with all those spots on them.
I'm not sure.
That boy better move. That shark's gonna eat him.
If you ascend from the Colorado River to the south rim of the canyon, you will have climbed nearly 5,000 feet and passed through 3 distinct habitats. Above the rim, you will find one more. The Ponderosa Pine Forest is home to tassel-eared squirrels, deer, and elk. Bobcats, coyotes, and hawks hunt here, as well as the top predators in the canyon, mountain lions.
Mountain lions are kind of scary. Mountain lions in Arkansas.
Because of its great size and depth, The Grand Canyon has a wide range of climates and habitats, and species that call the canyon home today survive on ancient rocks that tell us about life here long ago before there was a canyon. The grandest canyon on Earth.
Is that a picture or is that painted?
This is painted. It's taken lots of years of weathering and erosion to expose these rocks and shape this breathtaking landscape, and these processes continue to this day, relentlessly excavating the Grand Canyon.
That's massive.
Much faster.
Show the whole thing.
Imagine trying to paint that.
Imagine jumping off that.
What?
You'd probably lose your breath on the way down.
Yes, ma'am.
Whenever you brought up the dragonflies, like I personally think that dragonflies are pretty,